Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're located. I hope everyone is doing well considering the circumstances of the pandemic. First of all, we want to sincerely thank you for your time and welcome you to today's webinar hosted by the Retirement Advantage. This is the second installment from our Secure Act webinar series, and today we will be discussing MEPs to PEPs and more, what advisors need to know. My name is Bill Sunigal. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director for the Retirement Advantage. Today's presenters are Trey Galuppi, TRA's MEP Specialist, and John Markley, TRA's Director of Industry Relations. At TRA, we're excited about the expanded opportunities that the Secure Act will bring to the retirement plan sponsors and advisors, and we can't think of two people more qualified to explain these opportunities than John and Trey. Both are retirement plan subject matter experts and valued consultative resources for advisors and plan sponsors. Trey joined TRA at the beginning of 2020 and is primarily responsible for working with TRA's regional sales consultants, focusing on the overall expansion of the firm's consulting capabilities in the areas of group sponsor plans. This will include MEPs, PEOs, PEPs, MEPs, and producer group organizations in an effort to align these plans with record-keeping partners and distribution organizations that leverage TRA services. Trey has spent the past 10 years in plan administration, product development, and retirement plan sales. Before he joined TRA, Trey built his MEP plan background working with several retirement plan industry leaders. A brief background about John Markley. John founded Markley Actuarial over 30 years ago, and since 2018, Markley has been a division of TRA. John serves as a consultant to large plans, municipal plans, and plans with employee contributions. John was previously the president of ASPA's College of Pension Actuaries and is currently a member of the Government Affairs Committee of ASPA. He has a bachelor's in mathematics from the University of North Carolina and a master's from Penn State University. John is a visionary in the retirement plan industry, and we're fortunate that he's part of the TRA team. Before we begin, here's a quick review of the functionality of GoToWebinar. Everyone that logs in is on mute just to avoid background noises. To submit questions or comments, use the chat or questions pane located on the right side of your screen. You can enter your questions and comments there throughout the presentation. We will answer your questions at the end of the webinar. We'll now segue over to John to go over the agenda as well as a brief review of the Secure Act and how it's impacting plan sponsors and advisors. John?
Thank you, Bill. Let's take a quick look at today's topics for the presentation. We want to start with why TRA, why the Retirement Advantage is a good solution for services to the retirement plans that you work on. We want to take an opportunity to support the American Retirement Association filing relief proposals as a result of the coronavirus. And then into the meat of the presentation presented by Trey Galuppi, types of plans, MEPs, PEPs, and aggregation plans. We practiced this presentation already. I'm sure you're going to learn a lot from his presentation. He'll also then go into suitability and applications, and then we will leave some time at the end for questions. So why TRA? TRA, the Retirement Advantage, is your strategic partner for retirement plan services to create customized solutions for your retirement plan clients, share our deep retirement plan expertise to assure that you as a financial advisor and TRA have mutual business growth, and provide a seamless client service. Let's take a look at the information about TRA. TRA has plans in all 50 states. We've been around for 24 plus years. We have $8 billion under administration, closing in on 200 employees, retirement plan experts throughout the country, 8,500 plan sponsors nationwide, and 15 individuals on the regional sales team. So recently, the American Retirement Association came out with filing relief proposals related to the coronavirus. I will just mention that the presenters today Bill is in Wisconsin, I'm in Pennsylvania, and Trey is in Florida. So we have a great deal of social distance between us. The first proposal of the American Retirement Association is to extend IRS Form 5500 filings to October 15th automatically without the use of the 5558. I think that's a great idea. Our clients may have some additional challenges having the time to put together the information for us and then actually providing it to us so that we can prepare the Form 5500 filing. ARA also requested a 90-day extension to the deadline for correcting a failed ADP or ACP test for 401k plans. Again, I think something that makes a great deal of sense in the environment that we're in. I mean, it's not only a matter of doing the test, but you have to get the information from the client to make sure that you have done the test correctly, and this 90-day extension will allow us to do that. In addition, ARA is requesting a 120-day extension of the defined benefit plan restatement deadline. So you may be aware that all IRS pre-approved defined benefit and cash balance plans have to be restated by April 30, 2020, as it currently exists. Of course, I can assure you that TRA is hard at work meeting that requirement, but we do need the plan sponsor's help in order to complete the restatement, and so a 120-day extension will go a long way towards making sure the majority of our clients meet that requirement. A 90-day, also requested by ARA, a 90-day extension of the 1099-R e-filing deadline for employers. So 1099-Rs are to report distributions from qualified retirement plans. Normally that deadline would be March 31st, 2020. A 90-day extension would take it till the end of June. And then reasonable relief from notices required to be provided to plan participants under Title I of ERISA. Certainly, a lot of businesses are closed at this point. It seems perfectly appropriate that there be reasonable relief in this category. TRA will keep you informed about the latest developments. Please check tra.com for updates. So now let's step into the heart of our presentation, types of group plans. And for this, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Trey Galuppi. Trey?
All right, thank you very much, John. I really appreciate that. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time to join our webinar today. Today, we're going to be focusing on the three main types of group plans. And these are going to consist of multiple employer plans, which are commonly referred to as MEPs, the pooled employer plans, also known as the PEPs, and aggregation plans. And we'll be discussing the structure of each of these plans and how they're sponsored, who can sponsor each type of plan, as well as provide some insights on suitability for each of the plan types by exploring the advantages and potential disadvantages for each of these types of plans. So before we get started, I'd like to just take a moment and run through some of the terminologies that you will all hear throughout this presentation. When I refer to MEPs, this is an acronym for multiple employer plans. These are formerly known as closed MEPs, closed multiple employer plans. The PEPs that you may hear a lot of in this presentation are referring to pooled employer plans. Then you'll hear about us talking about a PPP, that stands for a pooled plan provider. These are the sponsoring entities of the PEPs, the pooled employer plans, and we'll get into a little bit more detail about their role and functionality as well. You may hear us talking a little bit about what's called a PEO. This is a professional employer organization. These are HR-related entities that provide services on behalf of the employer's clients, operating as the employer of record. They range from a variety of benefits that they're providing and providing services on, such as payroll and group healthcare benefits. Open multiple employer plans we'll be discussing as well. These operate in the same capacity as the closed MEPs, except individual Form 5500s are filed on behalf of each of the adopting employers inside of these plans. Okay, so let's dive into the presentation here. As I'd mentioned earlier, our focus today is on the three main types of group retirement plans available: multiple employer plans, pooled employer plans, and aggregation plans. So to better understand the basic structure of each of these plan types, it's important to first recognize the fundamental traits of each plan type. A multiple employer plan, or MEP, is a 401k plan that is sponsored by an appropriate entity, such as an association or professional employer organization, PEO, which allows various employers to band together to create one large 401k plan. Prior to the Secure Act being passed on December 20th of last year, these plans were often referred to as closed MEPs and have a single Form 5500, which is filed covering and identifying all adopting employers of the plan. Additionally, these plans provide for a centralized plan administrator, trustee, and plan sponsor. Multiple employer plans also require a business nexus to exist that is achieved generally through a bona fide trade association, a professional employer organization, a PEO, or of course, businesses under common ownership. The pooled employer plans are the newest type of plan under the Secure Act and are intended to operate under the regulations of a multiple employer plan. The fundamental differences of the pooled employer plan, or PEP, is that these types of plans must be sponsored by what the Secure Act identifies as a pooled plan provider, or PPP. The full details for registering as a PPP are expected to be released at a later time. The other notable differences between the multiple employer plans and the pooled employer plans is that no business nexus is required under the PEPs. In other words, unrelated employers would have the opportunity to band together to create scale, effectively reducing the administration, mitigating the liability, and potentially minimizing the cost for the adopting employers of these PEPs. The PPP may also file a combined 5500 as the multiple employer plan sponsor does, or at least under current interpretations of the Secure Act, may elect to file separate 5500s for each adopting employer inside of their pooled employer plan. Aggregation plans operate in a different capacity than the MEPs or the PEPs, in that each adopting employer of an aggregation plan will serve as the respective plan sponsor, and individual Form 5500s are filed for each adopting employer. However, inside of an aggregation plan model, there are other fiduciary roles that are centralized, allowing fiduciary relief to the adopting employer. As a result of the individual 5500s and the absence of a centralized plan sponsor, there is no business nexus requirement for an employer to adopt this type of plan. Okay, so let's take a closer look at each of these models separately, beginning with the multiple employer plans. Again, as a reminder, when we're speaking about multiple employer plans, it should be implied that these are in reference to closed multiple employer plans, unless otherwise stated. So who is able to sponsor and offer these types of plans? Under ERISA, the main types of entities permitted to sponsor and offer a MEP are professional employer organizations, PEOs, because of the co-employment relationship, as the PEO is considered the employer of record and files under the PEO's tax ID number. Bona fide trade associations and businesses under common ownership may also sponsor a multiple employer plan. However, our focus on this webinar will really be more intended on the first two. To reiterate, the multiple employer plans file as a single plan under ERISA, utilizing a single 5500, which is required to identify and name each adopting employer and provide an estimated percentage of total assets each adopting employer retains. So what do the roles and responsibilities look like under a MEP plan? As you can see on this slide, in a single employer plan arrangement, the plan sponsor has liabilities and responsibilities associated with several different fiduciary roles, mainly as a plan sponsor, plan administrator, investment manager, and plan trustee. It's important to point out that while many plan sponsors may have already elected to outsource these roles to other service providers, they are in most cases still liable for the work and the oversight that these service providers perform. Upon choosing to join or adopt a multiple employer plan, the single employer plan sponsor has effectively transferred the responsibilities and liabilities associated with these fiduciary roles to the MEP. At this point, the employer effectively becomes what is known as an adopting employer, which makes him or her free to focus on their business objectives without the burden of maintaining all aspects of compliancy associated with administering and sponsoring a plan for their employees. So what does a pooled employer plan look like? For the most part, a pooled employer plan will operate under the same requirements that a multiple employer plan does, with a few notable differences. First, the PEP plans will not require any type of business nexus and may be offered to employers across multiple industries and of varying shapes and sizes. The PEP plans will also receive some audit requirement relief, whereas in multiple employer plans, single employer plans, and aggregation plans, the audit requirement of 100 or more eligible participants stated on the Form 5500 will be required to conduct an audit outside of the plan assets, subject to the 80-120 rule if applicable. The pooled employer plans will not be required to conduct an audit as long as two conditions are met. Firstly, no single adopting employer has more than 100 eligible participants. And second, that the combined number of eligible participants across the entire PEP does not exceed 1,000. Additionally, all PEPs will be offered and sponsored through a pooled plan provider, or PPP. A common question to this statement would be, what is the difference between a pooled plan provider for a PEP and a plan sponsor of a MEP? And the simple answer to this is that a pooled plan provider would be a service provider of the plan and required to register with the Department of Labor and IRS as such. The specific requirements for a PPP is expected to be released inside of the Treasury regs and anticipated to happen later this year. Some of the other differences between these two types of plans and their sponsors or providers will be addressed a little bit later as we cover the suitability and marketing applications and aspects of these types of plans. So as you can see here, similar to the MEP model, the roles and responsibilities for a single employer plan would remain the same as the named fiduciary assignments of plan sponsor, plan administrator, investment manager, and plan trustee. Again, to reiterate, even though the sponsor of a single employer plan may have hired other entities or service providers to perform the task associated with these roles, they're still responsible for the work and the oversight of the services that are being done on his or her plan. Again, similar to a single employer plan sponsor adopting a MEP plan, the single employer plan sponsor would effectively become an adopting employer of a pooled employer plan, or PEP, and upon joining would have transferred those roles and responsibilities associated with being a plan sponsor, plan trustee, plan administrator, and investment manager to the PPP, or to those specific service providers that the PPP has appointed and designated inside of a PEP. So let's take a closer look at the structure and functionality here of aggregation plans. So unlike the MEPs and PEPs, aggregation plans do not have a centralized plan sponsor and do not file a single 5500, as individual Form 5500s are filed for each adopting employer. These types of plans, however, do have a centralized plan administrator, fund menu, and plan investment provider. Also similar to the MEPs and PEPs, these plans also utilize a centralized record keeper and third-party administrator. Like the aforementioned pooled employer plans, aggregation plans may be adopted by multiple unrelated employers. Adopting employers of aggregation plans will serve as their independent plan sponsor, but will mitigate the liabilities and a large portion of their fiduciary responsibilities as plan administrator identified in ERISA, sections 316, and fund managing fiduciaries under ERISA sections 321 and or 338. As we explore the levels of control and client accessibility to these types of plans, This slide is really intended to illustrate the varying levels of control each plan type exemplifies. The order of the plans on the screen is based on the assumed size and scope of these plans. The PEP plans would be controlled and marketed by the pooled plan provider and would carry the highest amount of responsibility, as the PEP plans are capable of covering a larger group of employers, since no business nexus is required. The MEP plans are listed below this plan, as a sponsor of a MEP is responsible for a more limited group of employers or members of a specific group, such as a PEO or an association. The plans would be marketed and designed for that specific group, whereas the aggregation plans can be custom designed for a specific group to endorse or market without the endorser being required to retain any type of fiduciary role, as each adopter of the plan would serve as their respective plan sponsor. So let's take a look at these to help answer the tougher questions of how to determine which plan platform is right for which clients. To first understand how to make this determination, a few key questions should be asked. It's important to differentiate between the type of role a particular client is considering as a plan sponsor or endorser as an adopting employer. When discussing plan type suitability for clients interested in sponsoring or endorsing a plan, the three main questions to ask would be, what level of control and responsibility does the client want? What does the client want the plan to accomplish? And who does the client want to offer the plan to? As we're discussing the plan type suitability for clients that are interested in adopting a plan for their employees, the three main questions that we would look to ask would consist of really the same first question here, right? What level of control, responsibility, and involvement does the client want? What type of plan and design does the client currently have? What I mean by this is, if the client only has a defined benefit or cash balance plan, or if they potentially have a self-directed brokerage account attached to their plan, they may not be a good fit for a particular plan type that cannot accommodate those types of provisions or that type of plan. And lastly, what are the client's top priorities of the plan? So this question would be used to understand if pricing is the most important function, or if retaining a specific fund arrangement or maintaining a specific service provider or any other top priorities really play a role in the decision making of what the client is looking to do for the plan and what their top priorities are. Pending the client's answers to these questions will provide a more refined understanding of suitability. For example, if a client's objective for offering a plan is to increase and retain memberships for their association, as well as provide a marketing strategy to elevate their benefit offerings to members, the most suitable solution would be between a multiple employer plan and an aggregation plan. Likewise, if the client had indicated that they have a defined benefit plan or a cash balance plan, then a pooled employer plan would not be a suitable solution for these plans, as these types of plans are not available inside of a PEP, at least as of not yet. However, if a client with a sponsoring objective to be provided a complete 401k solution that has competitive pricing and has ease of implementation with a wider range and versatility, and is intended to be offered across various unrelated employers, such as a payroll company or focus group, then an aggregation plan may be the most suitable platform to consider due to the flexibilities available in this type of plan. This slide is really intended to serve as a basic outlay of some of the key components of each of the type of group plans in discussion for both sponsoring and endorsing perspective, as well as the potentially adopting employers that are looking to offer a plan and provide a plan solution here for their respective employees. Here are some more examples of the suitability as they relate to plan sponsors. However, when considering suitability for adopting employer clients, there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all plan. Several factors will need to be taken into consideration These factors will range, but as we saw in the previous slide here, scale is found for each of the three types of plans in discussion, which ultimately drive down the fees and overall expense of a plan. However, as you can see from this slide here, there's varying levels of scale that are going to be attainable under each of these plan types. While price should not be the only factor considered, it's certainly an important one. The fund lineup and the expertise of the service providers that are facilitating various aspects of the plan, administration features, and management are equally as important for consideration when choosing to adopt or sponsor a specific plan type here. When looking at some of these potential examples of suitability, there may be some variations to the examples based on a particular client's answer to the previous questions that were asked. However, in common and more traditional understandings of these various plan types of entities, the potential matching groups that would be appropriate fit here will fall under that common assumption and common understanding of each of these types of entities. For a medical trade association, the group plan that best matches up would more commonly be a closed multiple employer plan. And this would be attributed to the size and marketing applications for this plan, as the scale is achievable for associations under this type. A chamber of commerce, is a little more tricky as an example, because these groups often range in size and members. Likewise, the committees who run the chambers have varying levels of involvement as well. The match that you see for this type of group was an aggregation plan. This was selected for the flexibility of membership to avoid any ambiguity between associations' bylaws identifying full members versus associated members, or bona fide status clarity, and there's other different types of examples of that can have some impact on sponsoring and centralized sponsorship of these types of plans. Additionally, by removing the fiduciary responsibilities from an endorsing entity for a chamber group, the aggregation plan would effectively be a suitable fit for this type of plan. However, very solid arguments can be made for these types of groups to be better matched with a multiple employer plan or even with an open multiple employer plan. A payroll company here does not have the same business nexus that a PEO would have, as the payroll group is not the employer of record for tax filing purposes and would be handling the file submission for a larger group of otherwise unrelated employers. Payroll companies tend to find the aggregation plans to be the best fit due to their ability to provide a more centralized plan offering that allows adopters to still design specific plan provisions such as safe harbor designs, varying vesting schedules, and/or eligibility requirements. As aggregation plans are structured to accommodate a wide variety of plan designs, additionally, aggregation plans may provide for administrative work relief for the payroll company who would only have to communicate with a single TPA and record-keeping system without being required to retain a fiduciary role in the administration of a 401k or defined contribution style plan. When looking at larger purchasing entities, such as hedge fund groups or private equity firms, the PEP solution here, the pooled employer plan solution, may be the most suitable, as these types of plans can be designed to accommodate a much larger scope of clients and could be set up specific to the PPP's business objectives. Centralization, control, and scale would effectively become the most pivotal points for these types of potential sponsoring entities. So as we had mentioned in here, because there is not a one-size-fits-all approach to the selection of a particular plan, and you have seen throughout the entire presentation, several factors here will play a role in both the selection and the adoption of a plan for both the sponsoring and partnering of determining suitability for an adopter of these plans. We find that partnering with the right firm can not only help to safeguard your client's legal responsibilities, but will do a tremendous job here in allowing your clients to not only be able to appropriately set their retirement goals, but to achieve them. So why choose TRA as your third-party administrator? Because in today's complex regulatory environment, it's more important now than ever to choose the right TPA partner. By partnering with the Retirement Advantage's team of experts, together we can help your clients and their participants navigate through the complexities of the Secure Act and future regulations as well to effectively and compliantly connect your clients with their goals. I encourage all of you to reach out to your regional sales consultants to learn a little more about the support and services that TRA provides, giving you, the advisor, the competitive advantage in this changing market. So thank you all very much for the time that everybody's taken here to log in, listen to our webinar. And at this time, we'd like to help answer some of the questions that have been coming in throughout the presentation. Please note, everyone, that if we are unable to get to your questions in the next 15 minutes or so that we have here, we will be reaching out to you directly to make sure that everyone's questions are being answered. And furthermore, if you wish to reach out to myself or your regional sales consultant at any time, please feel free to contact us through the contact information that's on your screen.
Thank you, Trey. Great job. We're going to go ahead and jump into some questions. So the first question, how about 403B plans? How does it affect it?
Sure. No, excellent question. I think with our 403B group in here on this thing, we also have John Markley with these plans. These plans are intended to be designed right now on the PEP plan side for defined contribution plans only, which would encompass the 403B side of the market. The multiple employer plans and aggregation plans are already established and set up to accommodate 403B prospective clients as well as 401k. And John, I don't know if you wanted to add anything with regards to the 403B markets in here with any of the plan types that we had talked about, but happy to have you answer any of those.
Great summary, Trey. I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay.
Thank you. Next question. Will there be any issues for a pooled plan provider who is a fund management group and a 316 to select their own fund management company as the 338 or 321?
That's a good question. So at this time, it is assumed that that will not be an issue, right? And if everyone kind of understands the question that had come through, really we're talking about fund management organizations that do and monitor certain types of fund menus and do the selection of those, 338 or 321 role. And the question would be, is there any issues for these types of entities to become and sponsor their own PEP plan? Right now, we're kind of operating on the sense that this will not be an issue. We are expecting an exemptions list to be released in here that will provide a more specific definition in here of which types of self-dealing exemptions will be allowed for these entities that are considering sponsoring or becoming a PPP inside of a pooled employer plan. As we look right now, those types of entities that are considering sponsoring these types of plans are expected to operate and govern under a best practices procedure based on the interpretations and the information that ERISA, the Department of Labor, and the current IRS regulations fit under a multiple employer plan. And so the idea of an entity that has capabilities of becoming a 316 or plan administrator for a PEP plan would be able to choose their own organization to handle the 321 or 338 roles for the fund monitoring process. Again, we will preface on this answer that we are waiting for the exemption list to clarify that and provide a little bit more substance there in detail about those types of exemptions that will be permitted moving forward.
Thanks, Trey. Who are the providers that are starting to build a PPP?
So right now, there's a wide variety of different providers that are starting to build the PPPs. I would say at the top of those lists are going to be your 401k administration groups, your TPAs, if you will, that are starting to kind of create the design for those. Developing and sponsoring a PEP is really not going to be done, and it's not going to be permissible for record-keeping entities, such as financial institutions in here. However, the TPAs already have the majority of the infrastructure that is required in order to operate and correctly and efficiently establish a pooled plan provider. That's where I would look to as far as the entities that are looking to establish those is going to be the TPAs at first, and then you're looking at large institutions that have the infrastructure already in place to be able to accommodate plans that can reach the potential scale of a PEP plan for 2021 when those plans are officially allowed to be started.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. How are you seeing broker-dealer advisors handle the comp structure within MEPs and PEPs? In other words, are all plans, regardless of size, the same?
No, great question. And no, they are not. They are not going to be the same based on size and scale here for these types of plans. As we had mentioned before, and looking back at some of the suitability clients in here, so I put this screen back up. When we talk about scale, the PEP plans and the market for those PEP plans really have an unlimited amount of scale, primarily because the ability to stretch out to unrelated employers with no business nexus allows for size and industry differences across thousands and hundreds of thousands of different style platforms to be able to combine together. And so when we look at the type of scale that a pooled employer plan is capable of maintaining in here, they have a much larger scope than what a multiple employer plan would have the capabilities of being able to maintain. Now, that is one of those situations that can be looked at as a positive attribute or a negative attribute, depending on the marketing abilities in here. The reason why we had linked up the multiple employer plans for, say, a specific trade association, such as the Medical Trade Association on this, was really to identify a more controlled group. The marketing applications for that multiple employer plan there would be specific to that group, the XYZ Medical Association plan, and be marketed and presented to this type of industry that is very commonly related offices or practices inside of that, and a little bit easier to maintain and control because of the flexibilities there that a plan sponsor of a closed MEP will be able to have, as opposed to a PPP across a substantial sizable amount of unrelated employers in here.
Thank you. Next question. Can you further explain the trustee requirements for a PEP? Secure states directed trustee responsibility for the collection of contributions. Doesn't the PEP trustee need to be a full discretionary trustee?
Yes. So the simple answer to that question is yes. However, under interpretations of the provision in here that defines the PEP plans, it is permissible for the PPP to hire a trust organization to maintain those aspects of the plan. The PPP is responsible for the oversight, the selection of that trust that's going to be maintaining those plan assets. But the PPP, as an entity, as a person in here, is required to register with the Department of Labor and the IRS and assume the role of that common trust.
Thank you. Do each company in MEPs or PEPs have the same investment lineups, plan provisions, or financial advisors?
Can you repeat that question one more time? I'm sorry.
Yes. Do each company in MEPs or PEPs have the same investment lineup, plan provisions, or financial advisors? Do they have to have the same investment lineup, plan provisions, or financial advisors?
So, excellent question. As far as the plan provisions, no. And if we're talking about provisions in the sense of plan designs, then no. They do not need to be under the same type of platform designs or provisions that are being offered. So each adopting entity inside of a MEP or a PEP should have the capabilities in here of setting up and designing their plan however the individual adopting employer sees fit. And that means by putting in potentially a match provision in there, a different set of eligibilities or vesting schedules, and this will go across the board to MEPs and to PEPs. However, the centralization of the funds that are being offered across the entire plan will need to be uniform. What I mean by that is the fund menu that is being offered to one adopting employer of a multiple employer plan or of a pooled employer plan would need to be made available to all other members of that pooled employer plan or multiple employer plan. A unified or centralized TPA and other service providers in here, such as the 316, 338, 321, those will all need to be common and centralized across every adopter of the specific MEP or PEP. If an entity decides to sponsor more than one MEP or PEP plan, they may offer different provisions inside of those types of plans or different set of service providers. As far as the advisory roles are concerned inside of a MEP or a PEP plan, this is really going to be more of a record keeping functionality, as we have seen, and there are certainly record keeping capabilities in here of providing more than one advisor on these types of plans. In most every case that we have come across in here, those different types of advisors would need to be a part of the same broker-dealer organization in here in order to have multiple advisors across one single multiple employer plan or pooled employer plan.
Piggybacking on that question, what roles does the advisor play if a MEP or PEP hires a 338? Will plans likely be sold direct?
So great question in there. The advisory's roles identified under the fee disclosure requirements in here would still end up remaining the same, right? And that role is going to be to assist the participants with questions that they may have about their plan, to assist the adopting employers with the roles and responsibilities of what their functionality is inside of this plan. If we're talking about a advisor that is taking on a more of an investment role in here, such as an RIA and doing the fund selection, then that specific advisor or the advisory group in here would essentially end up replacing the fund management fiduciary roles inside of a MEP or a PEP, such as the 321 or 338 roles inside of the plan. But again, that role would have to be centralized across all adopters of the plan.
Thank you. Now, you may have answered some facets of this question in a previous response, but any idea what entities may be eligible to be approved for PPP?
Yeah, so right now, as far as the eligibility as who can be a PPP on here, really with the exception of record keeping and financial institution platforms on there, any group that has the capabilities, the resources, and the infrastructure to accommodate the provisions that are outlined for a PPP of what we know so far, which are very limited in this, aside from registering with the Department of Labor and the IRS on here, is going to be able to become a PPP. So we will see, I think, at the onset of the pooled employer plans beginning January 1st of 2021, a variety of different sizes of PEP plans that are going to come out into the market. Some are going to be very small. Some may start off very, very large, with the anticipation that whatever the size of the PEP is, it will end up growing to provide some of the scale that's been mentioned throughout the presentation in here to have a positive impact on cost. That is generally the idea of how and why the pooled employer plans became part of the Secure Act and one of the big talking points of those. So when we look at who can become a PEP, a PPP in this regard, we're really looking at the entities that will be effective in that market are the ones that already have the infrastructure established for doing the monitoring, the oversight, and the administration of these types of plans. So that's why, in the previous question that was mentioned, the top of that list is really being looked at as third-party administration groups and any other type of administration organization that has use and experience in handling the oversight and administration for a large group of 401k or defined contribution plans.
Thank you. Next question. Regarding the 403B MEPs, I'm assuming the MEP will be all 403B plans and not mixing 403B plans with 401k plans.
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Correct. You cannot mix the nonprofit and profit style groups inside of one type of overhaul plan, because there is a single 5500 form that is being filed across an entire PEP plan or an entire MEP plan. And again, we're talking about closed MEPs in this regard. So if there is a 403B multiple employer plan, you would end up having all adopters of that plan would be nonprofit 403B candidates and adopters of that plan.
Thank you. If a TPA with a 316 is a PPP, any conflict of interest between admin and compliance?
As of right now, no. But this is sort of, I'm going to loosely refer to this as a gray area. And I'm only saying that because those lists of exemptions have not been released yet. But the operation and the understanding of the provisions and the interpretation of the guidelines that have already been set forth under multiple employer plans do not provide any reason to doubt that that would be changed or create more of a conflict there from a administration group also serving as a 316 plan administrator for the oversight of those types of plans.
Thank you. The Secure Act noted combined annual report, which has the same trustee, admin, plan year, and investments. How would these be utilized versus aggregated plans?
Sure. So under the aggregation, that'd be great. Let's read that again so everybody understands that question.
The Secure Act noted combined annual report, which has the same trustee, admin, plan year, and investments. How would these be utilized versus aggregated plans?
So under an aggregation plan, right, these plans are going to operate more or less as a single employer plan sponsor. All right, these plans are single employer plans. They simply provide for a centralized plan administrator and plan fund management group, right, such as a 321 or 338 inside of that entire aggregation plan. These types of plans, however, do not need to be required to go on to the same type of calendar year or fiscal year plan year inside of that type of plan, simply because these are being adopted into a existing shell here, which would be the pricing matrices, utilizing similar service providing entities on this, but are not being filed as a single 5500 form. But that is absolutely correct that multiple employer plans and pooled employer plans will be required to operate under the same plan year with the same trustee and same plan sponsor across the board for all adopters of each respective plan.
Thank you. Can you take us through a prospecting idea that may be new since the Secure Act?
Prospecting ideas that we have come across really is as we start looking at the pooled employer plans. And one of the main components that advisors and producer groups are bringing to us and to me personally on this is stating something along the lines of, oh, I've got 10 clients that are right in my area. I'd love to set up a pet plan and put all of those into it. The problem with starting off as a pet plan is that there will be no assets inside of the plan because the plans don't exist yet. Those plans are set to exist on January 1st. And in order to build up the asset levels and the scale that is needed really to get aggressive pricing and more competitive pricing models established to make a successful multiple employer plan or pooled employer plan can be achieved really through the aggregation plan model. where you have the specific requirements in here to have a centralized plan administrator, plan trustee, plan sponsor, fund management group, TPA, and 316 on here, you're going to find a lot of those components can be centralized effectively inside of an aggregation plan. This will allow an advisor that is intent on establishing a pooled employer plan or even a multiple employer plan in the future to build up the asset levels on there while still being able to provide a competitive priced solution that can allow unrelated employers to come in, and then decide at a later time if the asset levels based on the pricing that they are able to achieve from those asset levels will be an effective choice to make this plan converted into a pooled employer plan, or converted into a multiple employer plan, or simply leave it as an aggregation plan because of some of the flexibilities that are still available inside of that. But no, that's an excellent question.
Thank you. Looks like we have time for a couple more, just to be respectful of everyone's time. On the suitability slide, there were varying impacts on costs. Could you discuss the cost impact to potential adopters of these 3 plans in more detail?
Absolutely. So it works out well. I'm already actually on that slide. As we look in here, when we talk about cost, and I'm assuming that this is going to be referring to the adopters of these types of plans. And so if we look down at the bottom sections of these, when we discover in multiple employer plans, we do have a potential for lower fees. And the idea behind attaining lower fees in there is simply the scale, the economies of scale that we're referring to here, by having a large group of employers be able to band together to create that 401k plan. Because they are utilizing the same type of service providers in here, the same record keeping system, volume submitters on the TPA side and the 316 side on here, that creates for some administrative efficiencies on this. Those administrative efficiencies will help to lower the prices in here. A good example of that is going to be in an audit situation, where the audit requirements are going to follow the 5500. And because in a multiple employer plan, there is only one 5500 that is being filed, there's only one audit that is being filed, or one audit that is being required to be conducted there. And so that potentially lowers the cost. That has a positive impact on lowering the overall fees for all of the adopters inside of the plan. When we look at the pooled employer plans, you're seeing the potential for the lowest fees. And the reason for the difference in terminology right there is because of the ability to grow a pooled employer plan exponentially faster and at a higher rate here than what you would under a closed multiple employer plan, based on the accessibility factors of getting into these plans, again, without having a business nexus or some sort of commonality requirement to be able to join and adopt a pooled employer plan. So we're looking at the potential for the lowest fees in here because of scale, because of the amount of unrelated adopting employers and size that these PEP plans could potentially get up to. As we see inside of the aggregation plan model, there are fee efficiencies in here because these plans are priced out to be aggressive to begin with on this, but will also carry with them an aspect of scale based on the actual endorser of these types of plans and their specific aggregation plan that is being endorsed and promoted through their organization. The larger that those types of plans will end up growing, the better the impact of cost will end up being on those types of plans. But thank you, Bill. That was a good question.
Thanks, Trey. We'll wait a couple more minutes to see if there's any more questions that trickle in. But in the meantime, if there are no more, that's about all the time that we have today. But please look for our future webinars, and we look forward to helping you all achieve a successful and sustainable business future for a long time. If you'd like to continue this conversation, you can contact your TRA regional sales consultants directly at 888-872-2364, or you can visit our website at www.tra401k.com. And in the next couple of days, I'll be sending a follow-up email with a copy of the presentation deck, as well as a link to view the webinar. Again, we appreciate your time and participation. Hope everyone stays safe and healthy. And we'll just wait a couple more minutes to see if there's any more questions that come through. Looks like people are dropping off at a rapid pace. So again, we're going to go ahead and wrap this session up. Thank you very much for attending. We hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you, Trey.
All right,
Great
thank
job.
you, everyone. Absolutely. Thank you, Bill, for setting this up, and John Markley, and for all of you that attended. As Bill said, please be safe, and we look forward to working with you guys all soon.